Well, today it's actually pretty interesting. Back in 2011, on this exact day, September 14th, I hosted my very first cover crop tour. So I started way back then. And, I wasn't super familiar with what even a cover crop was or why we were planting it or what it was for. But that first year, I worked with my county extension agent and tried it out on this project that was 40 acres, and the goal of this project was to grow a forage-based cover crop so my family's cattle could graze on that in the fall to extend the grazing season. And as we did this, we measured the gain that the cattle had while they grazed the cover crop, and it worked so good the first year, I'm doing it to this day. Cover crops can definitely meet both the soils and the cattle's needs if they're managed correctly. So what that means is, yes, you're planting the cover crops, you need to get the cattle out there at the right time. So I always like to start grazing earlier than I think I should, because that's when the nutritional quality for the cattle is the best. And then you don't want to have the cattle out there too long, because if you keep them out grazing on the cover crop, they will eat everything and they'll be fat, which is good. But if you keep them out there too long, you eliminate the soil cover, and so that's kind of defeating the purpose. Yeah, the infiltration rate, if I remember right, was about, it took 3 minutes for 1 inch of water to infiltrate. So if you can think about that, how many thunderstorms or rain events in the summer do we get where we have that amount of rain in that short a time? Usually, hopefully, that doesn't happen too often. And in a year like this, when it's really dry, it's super important that we can capture every drop of rain that falls from the sky. So if your infiltration rate is very low, or your soil can't absorb water at all and it just runs off, then you'll suffer even more in the dry times like we're having today. And in my fields, I've noticed last year was excessively wet, and even though it was very wet, the infiltration had increased. And I noticed this because in the depressional areas in my field, the water ponding in those areas was significantly less than adjacent fields that are conventionally farmed. So I can tell that because I have living roots and those plants are using the moisture and allowing the water to soak in, that the water is going where it should be and not running off and creating more problems. I've actually eliminated tillage on my farm, so I've converted all my acres to no-till. So that really cuts back the evaporation rate if you're doing tillage. Obviously the residue on the field keeps the temperature lower and keeps the evaporation lower as well too. So it's better for the biology, which just keeps increasing the cycle.